Hey, what is up, mortals? It is TC Crew here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 7 of What If Deku Had Divine Dividing. I just wanted to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So begin. Izuku stood on the roof of a building within Training Ground Beta as he nervously counted the seconds until the first heroics training lesson began. Glancing over at his partner, the Divine Divider was glad to see that he wasn't the only one, as Itsuka was doing some breathing exercises. Their objective in this exercise was simple. They were the heroes who had to break into a building housing a bomb, held by a pair of villains. All they had to do was either touch the bomb or capture both villains before the time ran out. Easy, at least on paper that is. They were going up against Tokage and Kurara, but they were going to be the first group to do the exercise, with the entire class plus All Might himself watching them, judging them. "We got this!" Izuku blinked, not realizing that Itsuka had closed the distance between them to place a hand on his shoulder while giving him a warm smile. Seeing this helped him to relax a little bit, though he blushed a bit as he couldn't help but notice how heroic and alluring she looked in her heroic costume. Looking down and placing a hand on his chest, he too began to feel a little more heroic at this moment. After what his orange-haired friend had told him almost a year ago about making his smile his own, the teen had workshopped his old hero costume to remove All Might's influence. Now he wore the finished product, a hero suit with white markings on the side along with long white gloves on both of his arms. Hanging around his neck was a mouthguard shaped like a dragon's jaw rather than All Might's smile, and a hood with the pro hero's headbangs had been removed completely. Now he looked more like his own hero instead of a fanboy playing dress-up. "Yeah, we got this." As Izuku said that, All Might announced the beginning of the match. Wasting no time, the green-haired teen activated his quirk, the large wings appearing on his back before blushingly picking up his friend to carry her bridal style. With his friend in his arms, Izuku flew across the street, aiming towards one of the windows in the middle of the building, while one of Itsuka's fists grew to its maximum size. Once they arrived at their destination, Kendo wasted no time smashing the glass into thousands of pieces with a single punch. However, rather than going inside, Izuku flew upwards at the highest speed he felt comfortable at before landing on the roof, as Kendo used her enlarged fist to rip the roof access door off its hinges. Izuku deactivated his wings so that he could properly fit through the door. Their first plan had been simple. Have Izuku fly around the building looking for the bomb, and then the two of them would just crash through that window. However, both agreed that that sort of plan would work better had he had not shown everyone at the dodgeball game that he could fly. No doubt they would expect something like that. The same would go for the roof. So instead, their plan was to try and divide their opponent. Hopefully, after hearing that crash, one of the villains would go to investigate, leaving the other to guard the bomb, or the roof. As the pair moved through the top floor, they began to notice just how dark it was, the lights being turned off while all the doors were kept shut. It was so dark that the two had to move a bit slower while keeping a hand pressed against the wall. The two strained their ears as they listened for the slightest noise of their enemies approaching. As the two turned the corner, they were met by floating eyeball? The two heroes stared at it, wide-eyed, thinking that their own eyes were playing tricks on them. That is until the eyeball blinked, causing both hero hopefuls to scream. As the pair backed away from what was the beginning of a horror movie, Izuku felt someone wrapping their arms around his neck. The fear of being taken by surprise filled the teen, his mind going numb as he looked to the side to see the haunting face of Kurara grinning at him while showing off all his teeth. "Izuku!" As Itsuka yelled out his name, several small objects began to fly towards her. Quickly, they combined to form a pair of hands that swiftly wrapped the big fist girl by the wrists. Kendo soon found herself being dragged and pressed against the wall by the several hands across from the struggling Izuku. Then several large masses flew down the hallway along with a mouth that floated underneath the eye.
"Nice try with that distraction. Good thing I left an eye over here while the rest of me went to search the building."
As Kurairo began to tighten his chokehold on Izuku, the green-haired teen watched as those pieces of Tokage's body began launching right into Kendo's gut. And they didn't stop as they continued as though they were a never-ending series of rapid-fire punches.
It's over, hero.
As Kurairo said this, Izuku felt one of the arms let go. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw it reach into the darkness, where the rest of his enemy's body was most likely to be. Then, when he saw it next, in the dark villain's hand was the capture tape. This was it. Once that capture tape was wrapped around him, he would lose. He would have to lie there, unable to participate in the next rest of the exercise, leaving Itsuka to fend for herself against the two villains. Well, not if he could help it. So, with gritted teeth, Izuku reached out with his good hand to grab the wrist of Kurairo, surprising the dark teen.
Divide!
As Izuku activated his quirk, his wings extended to cancel out as much of the darkness in the hallway as possible. With no darkness for Kurairo to sink back into, it was like he was being pushed out of the wall. Midoriya used this, adding his own strength to add the momentum while spinning the darkly clad teen around. A second later, Kurairo's body hit the ground hard with a bounce. At the same time, Izuku continued his own spin while lifting his leg high into the air before sending his heel right into the gut of his attacker. At the same time, Kendo was turning the tables on Setsuna. The orange-haired girl, despite the pain she had endured, began to push herself off of the wall while growing her fist to their full size once more. With a fierce battle cry, she then began to swing both of her enlarged hands around, creating waves of wind that knocked Tokage's body parts around while irritating the lone eye. Then, smack! Itsuka's hand came down, swatting several of the pieces in one go, as though they were nothing more than a couple of annoying flies. Shrinking her hands, Kendo then ripped off the severed hands that still clung to her wrists before flinging them against the wall. At that point, Setsuna's eye and mouth were the only part of her still afloat. Seeing that there was nothing else they could do, they tried to make a break for it, only to discover that Izuku was blocking their path, as he had somehow gotten behind them. Tokage hesitated, and at that moment, Itsuka enlarged her hands once more to swat the last of the villain's pieces. With the fight over, Izuku looked over to see Itsuka holding her side with her once more normal-sized hands, but there was a grin on her face. A strained grin, but one all the same, which he returned. From there, the rest of the exercise was pretty simple. They found the bomb along with literally half of Setsuna, looking like various chunks of her body were missing. She tried to put up a fight, pieces of her body flying out at the two heroes in a vain attempt to keep them from the bomb. However, both Kendo and Midoriya were easily able to avoid the attacks thanks to all the parkour training they had done, touching the bomb with 5 minutes to spare. Once the match was over, all four were brought back to where the rest of the class was waiting for them. There, All Might heaped praise on all four of them for a splendid job, as both heroes and villains had good plans while also making good use of their quirks. And while he did criticize Izuku for hesitating as long as he did when Kirihiro got the drop on him, he was overly glad that he overcame this. As for Izuku, he just nodded as he basked in the glow of his own achievement, that he had been able to save himself, unlike what happened with Bakugo. From there, the rest of the matches continued. Everyone in Class 1B gave Izuku a look as he pulled out a notebook from somewhere, as he began taking notes on all the various quirks of his classmates and how they used them. The one that had impressed him the most was a pony, who had attached the capture tape to her horns before launching them into the air, guiding them to her target like a guiding missile. Not only that, but when the ground had been covered by her opponent's glue, she had gotten over it by jumping on her floating horns and riding them over the obstacle. All in all, it had been a good day, despite All Might racing away once the class was over. The next day, the students of 1B found themselves back in Training Ground Beta. Dressed in their hero costumes, they followed their homeroom teacher as he led them down the deserted streets. With their footsteps seeming to echo all around them, the place gave off a bit of a spooky vibe.
Alright, class. Today, while 1A is doing rescue training at the USJ,
you will be learning how to deal with large-scale ambushes.
Izuku flinched when Lad King brought up the USJ. They had all heard about the unforeseen simulation joint yesterday after All Might's lesson from their homeroom teacher, a place that was designed to simulate entire disaster environments in a controlled setting for training purposes. When they heard this, the entire class had grown excited, though less when the blood-themed hero said that he was trying to get a joint class training going with 1A, no doubt wanting to smooth tensions out between the two heroic classes. But obviously it didn't work out, and Izuku couldn't help but feel like it was his fault. He could still remember the way Mr. Aizawa had spoken to him, making his feeling for the green-haired youth crystal clear. That, along with the fact that Bakugo was back from his suspension, his presence heard loud and clear, were the more likely reason for 1A's homeroom teacher to reject the idea.
Hey!
Izuku nearly jumped when he heard Itsuka whispering close to his ear.
Don't worry about it. We'll go to the USJ another time.
At that, Pony chimed in as she leaned close to whisper as well.
Yeah, and we won't be keeping an eye out for that jerk.
Glancing around, Midori saw that while they had been quiet, the rest of the class seemed to have heard this. Many of them were either nodding in agreement or just giving the Divine Divider a reassuring smile. Seeing that made Izuku relax a little. Maybe he was just thinking about this too hard. Perhaps the reason the idea was rejected was that there weren't enough teachers to watch over them. Lad King, meanwhile, continued talking as if he had not overheard anything.
This type of thing can be one of the most terrifying aspects of the job. I'm sure that many of you noticed it in the entrance exam, examinees freezing or panicking when one of the robots suddenly appeared before them. It is that fear that you will be learning to overcome, to not hesitate when faced with danger.
So, are we going to be fighting the robots from the exam again? No offense, Mr. Vlad, but we already know we can take them. Vlad turned his head to look at his student, a sadistic smile briefly appearing on his face.
Yes, you did. But when you last fought them, you were in a group with robots targeting whoever they first came across. This time, however, you will be facing a dozen or so robots alone that can appear at any time. Furthermore, we will be making those robots a bit tougher, all thanks to the support department.
As if on cue, a three-pointer robot came racing down the street towards them at a speed much greater than they had shown during the entrance exam. What's more, there seemed to be someone riding on top of it. It was a girl with pink dreadlock-style hair, her jacket tied around her waist to show off her tank top, and her arms raised high into the air. Drawing closer, Izuku took note of the homemade steampunk-like goggles on her forehead, along with the various blotches of oil on her skin. Eventually, the robot came to a halt right in front of the group, which nearly caused the girl to go flying off.
Class, allow me to introduce Paoluda's first-year student in the support department, Mei Hatsume. She's here to make sure that robots pack a bit more of a punch than what they did during the entrance exam.
Mei blinked at that, though her insane grin never left her face.
Really? Power Loader really said that about me? I thought he just wanted me out of the classroom after I blew it up for the 18th time. But we've only been at school for... Not that I mind, of course. This is far more interesting than listening to another boring safety lecture. Now, if only I were allowed to really cut loose, I could show all of UA the pure genius of Mei Hatsume.
As she said this last part, Mei threw her head back to let out an insane laugh, once that sent shivers down all the students. And while the girl continued to laugh, Vlad King cleared his throat with a little cough.
By the looks of it, I take it that you finished what I asked you to do.
Hatsume stopped her laughing so fast that it nearly gave Izuku whiplash, turning her head to look at 1B's homeroom teacher while giving him a thumbs up.
Just about done. Though I do want to go over some other improvements to make sure these babies are a bit tougher to deal with. I can tell you all about it while you sign a permission form to allow me to use the support department's rocket fuel.
No.
As Vlad King said this, his face went flat as it lost all the humor it had and was replaced with a more stony expression. If that bothered Hatsume, she didn't show it at all. All she did was jump off the back of the three-pointer robot while still grinning like a madwoman. Vlad just shook his head, trying to look at his students.
Well then, while Hatsume finishes her job, I wanted to go over how this exercise will work. One of you will...
The man got no further as the man's ringtone went off. Grumbling, he pulled out his phone while giving the device a nasty look. Yet that look quickly morphed into one of abject horror, so powerful that his phone nearly slipped out of his hands. After catching it, he looked up at his students, who all stared at the man who was growing pale.
I have to go. There has been an emergency on campus. All of you are to help Hatsume and put everything away and then head back to class. Then wait there till I return. That's final.
And without another word, the man dashed off, quickly disappearing from sight. Once he was gone, Kendo quickly took the lead as she clapped her large hands together to get everyone's attention. Thankfully for the orange-haired girl, she received no pushback or outright refusal. They had all seen the look on the pro-hero's face, recognizing that something serious had to have happened for him to act like that. The only one who proved difficult was the lone support student, who spent the next 5 or so minutes fighting with Kendo as she did not want to undo all the hard work she had done. Eventually, Kendo wore the pink-haired mechanic down as one of the students began to move through the faux city to where Hatsume had stored the robots that she had tinkered with. And while on the move, the class began to speculate on what could have happened. Pony thought that an accident might have occurred at the USJ, one that needed all heroes on deck. At that, Subaraba let out a dark chuckle.
Yeah, how much you wanna bet that blonde jerk cost it? I can just see him losing his cool before exploding on everyone.
Hearing that caused most of the class to let out a nervous laugh. Given what they had seen of Bakugo's temper, it was a possibility. Not one they wanted to see happen, of course. As for Suku, the teen just scratched the back of his head as he looked away. Then, in the middle of the street, just ahead of them, came a swirling dark vortex made of mist. Instantly going on high alert, Kendo ordered her fellow classmates to hide. Everyone scattered at that, moving into the nearby buildings and down alleyways to take cover. As for Izuku, he, along with Shishida, Pony, Mei, and Itsuka, all made their way down into an alleyway. After a moment had passed, a lone figure walked out of the portal. It was a tall, lanky man with pale blue hair that was completely unkempt. Yet, what drew everyone's attention were the multiple severed hands on his body, holding onto his arms and face. And there was something else about this person that put Izuku on edge. Just looking at him caused the hair on the back of his neck to rise.
This is such a drag. Such a boring level to be on. I so wanted to be there when we defeated the final boss, not doing this side quest. If Kurigiri doesn't record that moment when Nomo smashes that man's skull in, I'm going to have to kill him. Hopefully the loot and reputation I gain from this will be worth it.
As Izuku tried his best to process what the man meant, more figures appeared from within the portal. 3 of them, each one with an exposed brain. A sudden crash filled the air right above their heads, and when Izuku looked up, gave him the answer. The first of these monsters had huge bat-like wings and a gas mask covering his lower face. The second had 4 eyes along with thin, lanky arms, making it look like a skinny gorilla. The final one was the most muscular of the 3, dark skin and eyeless, wearing tattered shorts. Staring at them, Izuku felt a cold sweat covering his body as he tried his best to swallow. Thankfully, he wasn't alone. Shishida's jaw had dropped, his hair form shaking in terror at the sight. Itsuka's face could not hide the fear she felt while Pony stood there, frozen in fear.
Sir, Midoriya, why aren't the alarms going off?
Izuku nearly jumped at the whisper so close to his ear, but he managed to keep himself still. He did not want to do anything that would catch the attention of these monsters.
I don't know. Maybe it was something to do with the press from yesterday. I heard that while we were in class with All Might, they managed to get into the school grounds. Perhaps there were repairs needed after that, and the alarms were shut off. No, that's not it.
Mei's voice was just barely above a whisper as she looked at the monsters herself, a hand on her chin.
Power Loader went over that system late into the night. I know because he kicked me out of the support studio before he left at 8. It's more likely that they bypassed the system thanks to that warp quirk they got. That's a pretty serious flaw.
Izuku shook his head before glancing over at Pony.
Not really. Warp quirks are really rare, and each one works in a different way. I heard that in order to detect when one is being used, the security equipment needs to understand the frequency of that warp in order to detect how they are warping time and space.
May slammed her open palm on Izuku's shoulder before giving him a thumbs up.
That's right! It looks like you're not just a bunch of muscles there.
Meanwhile, back with the villains, the portal had closed, leaving the four standing in the middle of the street, with their leader staring off into the distance towards the main campus.
Well, while the main boss, Nomu, is destroying the symbol of peace, I get to destroy this precious society. Oh, how their reputation will drop when the public learns that an entire school was slaughtered.
As the lead villain began walking towards the exit, the shattering of glass filled the air. Everyone looked up to see Tetsu, his body hardened by steel, first raised as he shot downwards towards the villain. The teen had screamed something that Izuku didn't quite make out, but the intention was clear as day. Sadly, he never made contact as the eyeless monster grabbed Tetsu by the arm before slamming him down into the street, as though he were little more than a ragdoll. Blood shot out of Steel User's mouth as he bounced off the ground.
No!
Izuku's wings had activated, sending him flying towards the villains without ever really thinking about it. The hand villain seemed to stare at him, letting the green-haired youth touch the monster still holding his classmate to use divine dividing upon it. As soon as he did, however, Izuku felt more power running through him than anything he had ever felt before. So much so that there was pain before his wings shattered into nothing. Falling to the ground, he looked up to see all four villains looking at him.
How nice! The pathetic low-level scrubs are coming out to meet us. Good. Let's kill them all.
Drop a comment about your favorite series or suggestions. Thanks to our team for another amazing video. If you're interested in joining our team and you are 16 years of age or older, feel free to check out the link in the description. Thank you all for watching till the end and have a fantastic day.